This is an informational hearing, so we'll take an overview of the bill from Representative Schultz. And I'll put it this way, kind of on behalf of both of us, being that we introduced identical bills, but I think you introduced yours first. So you're before the committee to just kind of give us a quick overview, and then we're going to take some testimony before we move to bills a little bit later. Representative Schultz.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Carlson and members of the committee. So Bill House File 150 would require MMB to include inflation when estimating the future state expenditures. So this is in the forecast. There was a comment earlier about would it be more difficult to balance our budget? We are the ones that put together the budget. So the MMB puts together the forecast that we use as a tool to put together our budget. So it doesn't specify what inflation measure to use, but we would use the expertise of folks at MMB to use what's appropriate. And I want to mention two things. In your packet, there's a comment by former Minnesota finance commissioners, and I'm going to quote some things from that document. But I'm first going to state a quote from the Minnesota's Council of Economic Advisors. They've been putting this in their forecast for many, many years, this statement. I just want to read it to you. You don't have it in front of you. So as it has done every year since 2003, the council recommends that budget planning estimates for the next biennium include expected inflation in both spending and revenue projections. Council members noted that Minnesota's current practice of excluding projected changes in the prices of goods and services from a majority of the spending estimate is fundamentally misleading. It is inconsistent with both sound business practices and CBO methods and potentially encourages legislators and the public to regard the state's financial position more optimistically than the facts warrant. The omission of inflation in the spending estimates in the November 2019 budget and economic forecast understates the cost of current services as provided by law in 22-23 by roughly $1.211 billion. And thus makes the amount of projected revenues above the cost of providing services to appear to be larger than it actually is. This distortion will increase if inflation accelerates from current levels. So that is from the Council of Economic Advisors, very respected members of academia and industry. And the column from the former commissioners who have served under Republicans, DFLs, and independent governors have said that the forecast simply serves as a reference document for the elected officials who are responsible for making appropriate decisions. It is naive to think that arbitrarily ignoring inflation pressures in the forecast will somehow control state spending. In fact, such a distorted picture of the upcoming budget period actually impairs the ability of the governor and legislature to make responsible long-term financial decisions. Further, the lack of accurate data on future financial conditions undermines public accountability for those decisions. The revenue forecast is developed by projecting changes in such economic factors as income and prices, which generate income and sales tax. No changes in tax rates are included in the baseline forecast because that's up to the governor and legislature to decide upon during their deliberations. Similarly, spending forecasts reflect the future costs of existing programs before any changes that might be agreed upon by the governor and legislature. Just as family budget planning considers both expected wage and heating cost increases, including inflation, the state budget forecast cannot pretend that forest rangers are not going to get raises or that the price of asphalt will not change. Whether or not inflation costs are fully funded in the subsequent budget is a separate policy question for the governor and legislature. So I believe the first time inflation was excluded was 1990. I believe Peter Hutchinson was the commissioner of finance at the time. And then the case that Chair Carlson mentioned in 2002. So currently we put it as a budget line. We don't put it in every budget line as inflation. And I think we should really seriously consider changing the methodology so we have more transparency and the public is well informed about what our actual budget surplus is rather than misrepresenting our revenue accounting for inflation and not representing our spending accounting for inflation.
Okay, thank you, Representative Schultz. I think what we'll do, if it's all right with the committee, before we take questions, we'll get the testimony because that might answer some of the questions. And this is an informational hearing, so, but in preparation for when the forecast does come out, so there's a little better understanding of the inflation issue. So we'll start a list if people have questions, and let's jump to the people that are here to testify. The first one is Jane Leonard, President of Growth and Justice. And by the way, we've got a variety of viewpoints that have requested to be heard here this morning, so I think there's a total of about 7 people. But if you can stand by, Representative Schultz, in case there's some questions of you a little later. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'm Jane Leonard, President of Growth and Justice. We're a policy and research advocacy organization that's focused on building a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable economy in Minnesota. And this week you will be seeing the Minnesota Equity Blueprint coming out in its full glory. Representative Schultz, thank you for your introduction. You took a little bit of my thunder, but I'm going to reiterate that we too, like the previous finance commissioners, believe that it's naive to think that arbitrarily ignoring inflation pressures in the forecast will somehow control state spending. And as you stated and as they stated, such a distorted picture of the upcoming budget period actually impairs the ability of the governor and the legislature to make responsible long-term financial decisions. And that lack of accurate data on future financial conditions undermines public accountability for those decisions. I just finished doing my taxes for the year, and Representative Jaskowski, your comment about family budgeting and planning, I take to heart because we do try to encourage inflation consideration as we're making decisions about our own budget in our family. And so I think that the state budget should consider that as well in the forecast. We are not aware, as the previous finance commissioners are, of any other state that legally mandates that its budget forecast must count revenue inflation but ignore discretionary spending inflation. And of course, that makes things look better than they actually are. The current law actually enables both those who want to spend more and those who want to cut taxes to falsely claim that there are more than enough resources to do so without trade-offs. As Representative Schultz said, the column that was from last March of 2019 was written by no less than 5 former finance commissioners. I've had the pleasure of working with at least 3 of them. They include John Gunyu, Peggy Ingeson, Jay Kradowski, Tom Triplett, Pamela Wheelock. They served DFL, Independence Party governors, as well as moderate and conservative Republican governors. And we at Growth and Justice, and I personally know and respect each one of these individuals, and we wholeheartedly agree with their argument in the March column, which I believe you have in your packets as well. I want to thank you for the work that you do on behalf of all of us, citizens of Minnesota, and thank you, Mr. Chair and members, and I'd be happy to take questions either now or later.
I think what I'm going to do is open it to questions after we hear the testimony, so unless somebody can't stay until that point, we'll just hold on questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'd be happy to stay for yep.
Our excellent staff pointed out that I said the forecast was the 28th when it was released. It's the 27th, and our hearing will be on the forecast on March 3rd. I was off by a day. Okay. It's a little forgetfulness on a Monday morning, I guess. All right, we have then Clark Bilger, or Bigler, I'm not sure, with the Minnesota Budget Project, Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. You pronounce it Bigler?
It's Bigler, yeah.
Bigler, okay, thank you. Identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Clark Bigler Goldenrod, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Minnesota Budget Project. We are an initiative of the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits, and we identify and promote policy solutions that expand opportunity and economic security to all Minnesotans. We particularly work in the areas of tax, budget, and economic policy. I'm going to thank Representative Schultz for bringing this bill forward. We strongly support House File 150, and I'm going to discuss a few reasons why. One, so including inflation in the forecast makes the forecast a more effective tool that gives policymakers, stakeholders, and the public a clear understanding of the state's fiscal health and helps them make better decisions. And two, making this change is good fiscal management and consistent with recommended accounting practices. To that first point, the state's budget and economic forecast are an essential tool for understanding the state's fiscal health. To be effective, forecasts should be complete and give an accurate picture to the state's commitments. And the state forecast should give us, the public and you, the policymaker, better information about the long-term cost of the decisions we're making today. This bill would ensure that the forecast includes a rough estimate of the impact of inflation on current expenditures and moves us toward these goals of a complete and accurate forecast. And that brings me to my second point, that making this change reflects good fiscal management and is consistent with recommended accounting practices. For every year since 2003, our state's Council of Economic Advisors has recommended that the state's forecast planning estimates include inflation in both spending and revenue projections. These are the set of economists who are charged with advising the executive and legislative branches through giving objective advice on economic and fiscal matters. They note that our current forecast methodology is, quote, inconsistent with both sound business practices and CBO methods. This change contained in House File 150 has also been recommended in reports such as the state's bipartisan budget trends study commission, which was charged with ensuring budget stability back in 2009. That commission recommended that financial forecasts should be based on current law and inflation or deflation of both revenues and expenditures to provide an accurate planning perspective. And it's also important to note what this bill would not do. It does not make any budget decisions itself. The legislature still has to approve an inflationary increase in a program or services spending, but you would have the necessary information to help you make more well-informed decisions. Putting together the state budget is an extraordinary task, and it makes sense to use all the tools available to support policymakers, stakeholders, and the public to put their best ideas forward. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and again, we're pleased to see the committee is taking time to consider this policy.
And I should have added when I was recognizing you, goldenrod. So, thank you very much. And we have now Scott Cronquist with the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Scott Cronquist with the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. We represent 48 districts that enroll just about 1/2 of the public school students in the state of Minnesota.
You're a resident of what community?
Well, actually formerly of New Hope, Mr. Chairman, but had the pleasure of being represented by you for many years and recently moved, actually. So.
Well, I'm moving on as well, but,
I heard that, yeah.
but I'm going to stay in the same house.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pointing out that you were a constituent, but
Yes, a longtime constituent, but unfortunately no longer. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Schultz, for bringing this important issue forward, and really appreciate the opportunity to share a few comments. The chairman highlighted the change in 2002, but I want to back up even 1 year prior to that, because another very significant change was made in 2001. That year, the legislature and governor decided to do away with what was called the general education levy, and instead have the state assume responsibility really for funding education through income and sales tax collections. And then, of course, the following year, the change was made to remove inflation from the expenditure forecast. And so what I'm going to do is just highlight how that has impacted school districts. And now I can't say that there are no other factors, because certainly there have been other factors over the years, but we think those two changes have had a significant impact on our school districts. I also recognize that there are a lot of different topics you could talk about, whether or not it's which measure of inflation you should use, and I'm not going to get into those. But since 2003, so right after those two changes were made, the general education formula has lost significant ground to inflation. In fact, it would be $639 per pupil higher today had it kept pace with CPI inflation. Now, granted, total education spending, if you were going to add in things like pupil growth, and the fact that we now have 40,000 more students in our public schools than we did back then, or if you're going to add in things like full-day kindergarten that have been added since then, or early learning programs, or facilities maintenance, or local referendums that have been approved by taxpayers, if you're going to add all of that in, then yes, it's gone up by more than inflation. But the general education formula, which is the single most important revenue stream for our school districts, has lost significant ground to inflation. At the same time, the special education cross-subsidy, and for those of you that don't serve on the education committee, that refers to the shortfall in our special education program, the amount that revenues are falling short of expenditures. That's currently over $700 million a year. And likewise, we have a shortfall in the English learner program of about $100 million a year. Over the years, these have all taken a significant impact on our school districts. In fact, we just completed a budget survey. Our member districts are projecting a $93 million combined shortfall for next school year, the 2020-21 school year. Now, our platform has long called for the formula to be linked directly to inflation, but another option would be, we think, would be to include inflation in the budget forecast. And we think that would result in more transparency and give you as policymakers a lot truer picture of the financial condition of the state. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you again for the time. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And again, if those of you that are testifying can stay close if there are questions. So we now have Mark Haverman, Minnesota Center for Fiscal Excellence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Mark Haven. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Center for Fiscal Excellence. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about this morning. This is a topic that we have studied and written about for many years, first in 2005. And over the course of years, we quickly discovered that this is a much more complex issue than how it usually gets portrayed in the newspapers. How you go about it is just as important, if not more important, than whether or not you do it. And that good arguments do exist on both the pro and con side. We came at this issue from the standpoint of neutrality, asking what perspective introduces the least amount of bias into the budgeting process. We concluded then, and we still do, that the practice of keeping it as supplementary information rather than formally including it in the forecast, but giving it a much higher discussion profile than currently exists in the economic forecast, best serves this objective. Let me quickly give you 3 reasons why this is the case. We believe this is the case. First and most importantly, despite the claims to the contrary, the economic forecast is also very much a budgeting tool. It's not just a reference document, and thereby introduces its own potential for its own type of intellectual dishonesty. The House fiscal brief that I believe Mr. Marks passed is something I'm going to be quoting from here. Planning estimate inflation has also been a tool to provide more flexibility for a governor and the legislature in assembling a new budget. The inflation creates a cushion of several $100 million that is already counted as spending in the budget forecast. Now that several $100 million is $1.2 billion today, which is a very comfortable cushion. Including inflation enables a lot of spending on brand new or expanded government programs without ever having to properly recognize it fiscally to taxpayers as new government spending. And that new and expanded spending may have tails that actually far exceed inflationary projections going forward. Second, government has the ability to manage inflationary pressures in what is by far its largest purchased input, both with respect to the design and delivery. Approximately 60% of the implicit price deflator for state and local government, which is a inflation measure specifically targeted towards state and local government, is government compensation. Now, it's been said that the state budget cannot pretend employees aren't going to get raises, which we heard in that in the column that was cited earlier. But we also cannot pretend a consumer price index forecast reflects the reality of collectively bargained compensation agreements and the constructs that are employed. And I think here the dual existence of the forecast is especially significant. As a planning tool, inflation-adjusted spending amounts might estimate the cost of keeping the existing government workforce whole. As a budgeting tool, cost of living adjustments already baked into the forecast as a given would pressure negotiations to begin from that base. And finally, contrary to claims, we believe including inflation does not communicate the, quote, real cost, unquote, of state commitments and government services. Rather, it communicates some sense of the cost of how these services are currently provided under the existing laws and rules. It's really the cost of maintaining the status quo. Inflation then makes it easier to preserve current methods and practices when new ideas and strategies may be needed. All that said, this is a very important issue and a very legitimate issue that needs attention. And we do believe this issue does deserve a higher profile in the information provided in the economic forecast than it currently receives, which, as Mr. Marks identified, was largely a number and a footnote. It deserves more discussion than that. A bigger discussion of the areas of government spending that are and are not included, inflation measures used, and where some of the greatest inflationary pressures in government do exist and why they do exist is important. To conclude, Mr. Marks, I think, if I can maybe paraphrase him a little bit, said it's always been a sort of struggle to figure out a way to illustrate the importance of this, but not demonstrate a commitment to it. And I think keeping it as supplementary information, but raising its presence in the economic forecast is the appropriate way to go about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And we now have John Phelan with the Center of the American Experiment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for having me in this morning. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you a little bit about this today. My name's John Phelan. I'm an economist at the Center of the American Experiment. We're a think tank based in Golden Valley. So I just want to give some kind of background and context to this discussion. One of the things that we should note about is two things are really important. Firstly, inflation is low and expected to remain so. Inflation is a problem because it erodes the purchasing power of a unit of currency over time. At high rates of inflation, it can do so over short periods of time. Even at low rates, it can do so over long periods. But this is not Weimar Germany, it's not Zimbabwe, it's not Venezuela, it's not even America in the 1970s, when inflation hit 13% in 1980. Since 1983, inflation in the United States has averaged 2.7% annually. In the last 10 years, it's averaged 1.6%. And this is expected to continue. As of Friday, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the 5-year forward inflation expectation rate is 1.63%. Now remember, high inflation over short periods can erode the purchasing power of money. But with inflation at the low levels we have seen over the past 37 years, the 2-year period of the biennium is just not long enough for this to be a significant factor. I just want to speak a little bit about the question of tail years. If we're talking about inflation in 2022 and 2023, then that would seem to me to be a discussion that you really want to be having in 2021 when you set the budget for those years. Now, because inflation is low, we're not talking about very much money here. At the end of 2019 legislative session, Minnesota Management and Budget forecast the state government's total general fund fiscal year total spending for 2020 to come in at $24 billion. If, in the meantime, there's been inflation of 1.6%, then, in 2019 dollars, that spending will total $23.6 billion. In effect, the state government spending will be 1.6%, or $383 million lower in real terms than forecast in 2019. For 2021, with a forecast spend of $24.5 billion and inflation of 3.2% since 2019, the state government spending will be 3.2% or $785 million lower in real terms than forecast in 2019. But to repeat, in 2019, this is a real terms spending reduction of 1.6%, and it's a reduction of 3.2% in 2021. Over the biennium, that adds up to a reduction of real term spending of 2.4%. Are we really supposed to believe that Minnesota's state government is such a leanly efficient beast that that spending couldn't be 2.4% lower over the biennium? Not surprisingly, Minnesotans wouldn't generally agree with that. In the fall 2019 issue of our magazine, Thinking Minnesota, we asked Minnesotans what percentage of state spending is wasteful. Among Republicans, the answer was 36.5%. Among independents, the answer was 25.4%. Among Democrats, the answer was 24.4%. Overall, Minnesotans believe that 28.2% of state government spending is wasteful. In their view, you should have no problem whatsoever finding savings of 2.4% over a biennium. Now, I'd like to put this in some context just to finish off. We've heard about, declining state government funding and declining state spending. But between 2010 and 2019, Minnesota state government general fund spending increased in real terms, because we're looking over a decade, by 35%. Spending in 2019 was higher than ever before in the state's history. In per capita terms, adjusted for inflation, state government spending was 27%, rose by 27% between 2010 and 2019. Once again, in real terms, Minnesota state government has never spent more money per resident than it does right now. Indeed, in 2019 dollars, even accounting for inflation, 2020 and 2021 are set to be the state government's highest spending years in history. When we look at the fiscal years 2022 and 2023, the numbers from the budget and economic forecast show that even accounting for inflation, those years will set new records for state government spending. So again, I would say the idea that savings of 2.4% over the biennium are unthinkable and just doesn't add up. Thank you very much. I'm happy to stick around and take some questions.
Okay, we're going to have questions now, and maybe how many people have a question? So we wanted to limit the time to some degree so that we're sure to get. We've got several bills on the agenda. We do have the room until noon, but I would prefer to get done before noon so that the room can be cleared for other committees coming in. So it looks like we've got 4 people at this point, now 5. Okay, Representative Hertaus. I think you had your hand up earlier, and so I asked you to wait until we got done with the testimony.
Well, thank you, Mr.
Identify perhaps who you're going to ask your questions of members, and then maybe if the folks that testified could come down and sit in some of those chairs behind the podium, then we can reduce the back and forth. So Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I guess my question would be directed to Representative Schultz as well as to Mr. Phelan and maybe Mr. Haveman. The issue of budgeting for inflation in its context is, in my judgment, is kind of interesting because there's kind of a nexus to sound money as well. And most of us in contemporary America in our lifespan have not known anything other than the experience of the cost of things continue to rise. But my reading of history shows that between 1820 and 1906, oftentimes referred to as the age of Jackson, President Andrew Jackson, that $5 bought about the same amount of goods in 1820 as it did in 1900. It was an incredible period of sound money and stable prices. There seems to be this perpetual tension, if metaphorically I might call it a rubber band, where government is always pulling on the rubber band and the private sector is on the other end of it. And it seems like there's always this tension of the rubber band, always pulling on it. And it seems like the private sector can never really catch up. And so for those of us in my adult lifetime, I've come to realize, as I'm looking at walking through the threshold of retirement, that my first dollar earned when I was a young man is only worth a dime today. And if you went back to 1906, it's only worth about 3 cents if you were alive in 1906. And so if we were to include inflation as part of a budget tool, and I agree with some of the comments the testifiers have made about there being a great deal of discretion with regard to putting together budgets, I would have great concern for it to being a statutory requirement, because I lived through periods as a young man trying to feed a family and having a small business of experiencing inflation in the double-digit range of 10, 12, 13%. And to try to fund these changes that were going on and going to the bank, the bankers were charging rates of 16, 17, and 18%. In fact, in their infinite wisdom, they told us, we won't borrow you the money because you can't afford it. So I guess my question to each of these people, both Representative Schultz and to the testifiers, is what do we do if this is a statute when we have runaway inflation, which, you know, maybe it isn't in the future right now, but it certainly could be. And one of the comments was made about the level of spending in Minnesota. A good case in point is some numbers recently, last month in January, I was looking at Arizona's state budget.
Representative Hertaus, maybe if you could get to the question. I've got a relatively long list of people here that have questions. You identified 2 people you wanted to respond, so if you could narrow it down to the question, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to conclude my remark I opened, is that Arizona has about 40% more people than Minnesota. Its biennial budget is $24 billion. Minnesota's 48. And we've seen state spending grow in the last 7 years at nearly 50%, and annualized out, that's about 7% per year. So my question is, do you think it's good policy to build in automatically inflation into our budget?
Representative Schultz.
Chair Carlson, Representative Hertaus. Well, this is in the forecast. So we want to have a tool to help us build our budget. So the inflation would be required in our forecast. It doesn't mean the legislature and the governor would actually include all of the inflation that's in the forecast in their budget. That's up to the legislature to decide. But it is fiscally responsible to have a good forecast that we can build the budget from. So you can't hide from inflation. So even if we ever, hopefully we won't see double-digit inflation, it is good to know what our programs would cost, because costs go up, prices go up, cost of labor goes up. So to be fiscally responsible and to be consistent with general accounting principles, it is good practice to have it in our forecast. It doesn't mean that every inflationary increase is going to go into a budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and
Representative Hertaus.
thank you. You know, and I think we have to be careful with percentages, because using my rubber band anecdote, you know, a family that's trying to get by on $40,000 a year, if a 2% inflation, you know, that, or the assumption that there was 2% of income growth and that we can continue to grow our state spending, you know, 2% of $40,000 is an $800 family growth. But on the other hand, somebody who has $150,000 of income, still just 2% is $3,000. So you start to get quite a tension, again, like the rubber band, between the haves and the have-nots just by building in inflation. And I think government tends to drive inflation by the spending it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Skowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I was intrigued by and already thinking about the same direction that Mr. Phelan brought forward. As we look at the numbers, Mr. Chair, these inflation numbers in the chart that Mr. Marks brought forward are about what I understand the history to be. Government has grown at a much faster rate than these numbers. So I'd be curious, and maybe just an informational request, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Marks or somebody has put together or could put together a comparison of what the amount that government has grown in each of these years for, say, the last 10 years or so, compared to what it would have grown if simply these inflation numbers that we experienced had been applied.
That's a request of, is that something that you could do? Yes. Okay. Thank you. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Thielen.
Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So recently, my husband and I went over our budget, our monthly budget, and we discovered, you know, there might be a cheaper cell phone plan out there. And so we did some checking around, and we found that we could save about $100 a month. And so my question is, if this bill is adopted, does that act as an incentive or disincentive for government to find savings going forward? and maybe they don't even look for that now, I don't know. I think that at some time in the past, we've had some sort of incentives for those sorts of savings. I don't know how often they're applied in law, but just what your thoughts are going forward if this bill's adopted as far as government kind of shopping around and finding the best deal for the taxpayer.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, certainly. Like I say, we're not talking about, I mean, this isn't the 70s, you know. We're not talking about huge amounts of money here. So if you say to, you know, to Department X, you know, well, inflation has raised these prices of the things that you need to purchase by, you know, 2% or something. So you need to find 2% savings somewhere else. I mean, I don't think that's the most difficult thing in the world for government. It's certainly difficult, and just to go back to a point that somebody made earlier, if you asked, you know, a low-income family, they'd struggle with that because inflation disproportionately impacts low-income families. But I don't, yeah, I mean, absolutely, this would be something that I would think a state government department should be able to deal with. And if a state government department is really going to say, look, we are so efficient that we cannot lose 2%. You know, we can't cut 2% anywhere. You know, I can't imagine the level of efficiency that would take. If that's actually true, I would applaud them all. I don't buy it, frankly. I don't think most people buy it. I think it takes a huge stretch when you look back, you know, at things like MNLARS, where we spent $100 million on a driver's license system that didn't produce any driver's licenses. You know, when you look at things like DHS is a constant problem, just hemorrhaging cash. I think it's absolutely, it just beggars belief, the idea that you couldn't find over the short period with the low inflation rates we have these kinds of problems. And if we did have the inflation rates of the, you know, mid to late 1970s, like I say, we were talking up to 13%, I think that this would be a fairly small problem then in the grand scheme of problems that you would have to deal with.
Chair Carlson, may I answer that question?
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Chair Carlson. So we do have CPI measures, chain CPIs, that actually substitute smart goods and services in a basket. When there are cheaper alternatives, you can put them in the basket. So there are CPI measures that would account for your question.
Okay, I'm going to, we got 3 or 4 more people. Representative Creashaw, you'll be the last one, and then we're going to move to the bills, but there's still some in front of you. Representative Scott, were you done?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we're Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is actually a question for Professor Schultz. Help me out here.
Okay.
Mr. Thielen has focused in on, well, for one biennium, the inflation is really kind of immaterial. And I did a little math, which is always dangerous. But since 2002, when we dropped inflation out of the budget forecast for much of the state budget, simple addition, so on an uncompounded basis, the CPI has increased 39.2%. And of course, in people's lives, they don't live 2 years at a time, they live in an overtime. So is focusing on just what this would mean for one biennium the appropriate way to look at this, or should we be thinking about how the lack of accounting for inflation compounds over time that Minnesotans look to us for services?
Do you want to be Dr. Schultz or Representative Schultz?
Just
Representative Schultz.
Just Representative Schultz. So we do look at the effects of not counting inflation. So when we look at the higher education budget, for instance, something that I know pretty well, we can see what the trends are without inflation and with inflation. And because we haven't incorporated inflation into our appropriation to higher education, just like K through 12, you can see a huge difference. And that burden falls on families and local school districts and students in terms of higher tuition and higher costs. So we just shifted that burden of state responsibility to families. And so when we don't account for inflation in our forecast, we don't have a real sense of what we should be budgeting, what's appropriate to be budgeting to maintain the same level of services and education that people expect from the government. So where I don't think we're being very fiscally responsible by not talking more about inflation and the effects. So it's it would behoove us to do more discussion like some of the testifiers have mentioned, but also we do need to look long-term, not 2 years, but in the tails, 4 years out when we're looking at our forecasts. So we have a sense of, do we have money for new programs or do we have money to reduce taxes? So I'm kind of tired of hearing we have this huge surplus when we don't account for inflation, and I think it would change a lot of our discussions here at the Capitol if we were more responsible. But in terms of Mr. Phelan's discussion about our overall state spending, our state budget increasing, you have to account for per capita spending of state spending. So per capita, our population has grown over time, and so our budget is going to grow just because our population has been increasing over the last 30 years.
Representative Dabney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Schultz, you make a good point about the transfer of costs. A few years ago, I was out door knocking in a suburban area and went to the door, and it was at the time when the state was withholding 40% of K-12 funding to school districts to help balance our budget because we were neither willing to cut spending to balance the budget or increase taxes to balance the budget. So instead, we made school districts pay for it by withholding their funding. And the school district that I was door knocking in had actually had to go out and borrow from banks in order to make cash flow. And the door opened, and I could see two tweenish girls in the background, and Dad was there at the door, and we got talking, and I mentioned this school district's experience with the 40% withholding of K-12 funds, and he said, yeah, you know, it's nuts. I had to go out and buy laptops for both of my girls because the school district doesn't have enough textbooks. Exactly your point. We cost shifted a small tax increase to instead be a large purchase of laptops for his girls so that they could do their homework and advance in their K-12 studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Schultz, in your opening comments, you made reference to the Council of Economic Advisors. And I might remind you that in every year subsequent to that statement being included in their forecast, it's been roundly disregarded by a bipartisan manner. And so I just want to make sure that you're reminded of that. When you talk about structural balance, and that was one of the things that has been brought up by Mr. Marks, I have a question for you, and I do have a brief follow-up, Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me. You talk about planning estimate inflation versus a structural balance, which we in this room talk about frequently with regard to the budget that we set on a biennial basis. So how do you reconcile planning estimate inflation in your mind as an economist versus a structural balance which we are by Constitution obligated to provide to the state of Minnesota?
Chair Carlson. So we do have to balance our budget as a state. We can't operate like the federal government and run a deficit and accumulated debt. But we also have in our revenue forecast, if you are uncomfortable with including inflation in our spending, we should calculate revenue similarly. So we should be consistent in how we do our forecast on the revenue and the spending side, rather being lopsided. So we do have to balance our budget, and we have additional revenue coming in because people's income goes up, wages go up, and so our tax revenue is going up. And similarly, on our spending side, because of inflation and costs, and some entitlement programs are automatically adjusted for inflation in Health and Human Services. But we don't do that across the board. So because it's a planning tool, a forecast, doesn't necessarily mean that that's how our budget is going to be decided. It's just better information for us going forward so everyone doesn't think we have a large surplus that we should be spending on more since it's one time. And a lot of that could be accounted for inflation. So I just think it's fiscally responsible for the legislature to get the best information possible from the forecast.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I couldn't agree more with you on that point, Representative Schultz, because we don't literally have much money on the bottom line in this current session. So I would agree that we shouldn't be looking at appropriating money for new programs. Based upon what you just said, I think it would be incumbent upon us to take a look at one other item that is typically forgotten in this equation. Family incomes, when they put their budget together on an annual basis in terms of where they're going to go for summer camp, how they're going to pay for, clothing for their kids, whether or not there's enough money on the bottom line to pay for the monthly expenses, they go based upon what the salaries are going to be for that year. They understand that over the course of that year, things might necessarily go up in terms of the cost for the goods and services that they need. And so there should be a reckoning to government in terms of we should not understand that everyone is going to get a pay increase, that subsequently we will extract some of that for the benefit of government services that we and others might think deemed appropriate. I'm reminded of the fact that since 1964, even when you include the growth of population, which oddly enough is going down in the state of Minnesota, pursuant to the census upcoming, the growth of government has gone up by 500%. But yet the growth of incomes has not kept pace with that, which leads me to suggest to you that we are growing government at a pace that is unsustainable for the citizens of Minnesota to pay for. When you talk about government programs, we have to be reminded of who pays the bills for those programs. It is the people that are going to work every day, making a living, trying to run a business or put their kids through college or just more or less school at a K through 12 basis. And yet we are going to, in a sense, by including inflation in that equation, demand more money because we will objectively, whether you agree with this or not, we will become and we will cede that inflationary budget adjustment to the administration. And it will circumvent the process in the legislature by determining what is best for the citizens. I think it would lead us to pay more for what we're already getting, rather than getting more for what we're paying for already. Thank you.
Representative Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Representative Schultz. In your bill, it says inflation, but it doesn't say which measure. Which inflation index would be used, because all I see is the word inflation, and we've heard different inflation measures being talked about here.
Chair Carlson, that would be up to the professionals at MMB to decide what is appropriate, because it may change based on what line item you're looking at.
Whichever is higher.
And I think the numbers that Mr. Marks was using were based on the CPI. As far as the handouts are concerned, Representative Schultz is correct. That would be, there are different indexes, as you probably know as a former banker, maybe you're a current banker, I'm not sure. But I know some of the school districts choose to advocate for something, I think they call it the government inflationary index or something like that. So that would have to be determined. Representative Vogel, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. Well, I agree that there are different measures, and I think if we're going to, excuse me, put this in statute, that it's important to define from the legislature standpoint what that is, because we're talking about 2.5 and 2.4% CPI, but the Fed is using PCE, which is 2.0, and if you look today, as the one of the testifiers was saying, the 5-year forward on the tips is 1.64. Now that's half of what the 2.5 and 2.4 are. So I do think if this is going to go forward, that it's a legislative directive to put in statute, and I would hesitate to let MMB just subjectively decide one measure or another. Also, Representative Schultz, how is this going to affect and make differently the way targets are set if this is enacted compared to the way they are set now?
Representative Schultz.
Chair Carlson, that's a good question. I don't think, I guess it would be up to the leadership to decide how they're going to set the target and what they consider, how they consider inflation as important or not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, another thing, looking at the bill, the way it's drafted, I'm wondering if it's just going to add more complexity to the information we're getting and not help us, because if indeed the targets are going to be set the same way they are now, or if it's not defined, then we're already getting that information. It's just a matter we're putting something in statute. Mr. Chair, one more question, please. Okay, so, I'm familiar with the pensions and the liability that is accrued and not reserved for. Right now, we set in statute a 7.5% return. If indeed we're going to be doing things like inflation projections, then Representative Schultz, should we also be looking at those pension liabilities at a more realistic rate? Because if we're assuming inflation at, say, around 2%, and we're assuming that long-term we're guaranteed 7.5% into infinity, the money is going to have to come from somewhere, and should that also be taken into account here?
Chair Carlson, so I believe you're talking about our MSRS pension system, and they look at the rate of return. They also have cost of living adjustments, and they have changed those over time, and they have looked at the rate of return to make sure it's reasonable and that pension is funded. So I think that we should be fiscally prudent in all aspects, not just our forecasting, but also in requirements for the MSRS system. But I think that the way we currently account for inflation is one line item, and Mr. Marks can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I think it would be better in cases to have that for programs for every line to have what the inflation adjustment is, like we had done before 2000.
Well, Mr. Chair, just to follow up, the reason I bring up these three questions is that we're making a simple little change in statute, and yet we're affecting a whole lot of other things, and I just don't think this is ready for prime time. If we're going to be making changes like this, I think we have to look at it holistically, not with just simply saying we're going to add inflation on 1.110. Thank you.
No, we're not in prime time right now, Representative Vogel. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is informational. I think the word inflation, and we can double check, I think was what we did in the past, but I'm not positive.
That's
that we
correct,
correct.
Chair Carlson. This is reverting back to what we did before 2000.
I mean, it's being acknowledged, we didn't put in a specific index, but it was inflation. But good discussion points. Representative Creeshaw, you're the last one.
Thank you, Mr.
And then we'll go to the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is and a clarification. I'm not necessarily going to call Mr. Cronquist back up, but as I heard this, and I think this is an interesting discussion, it's not going anywhere. It's for information only. But as we talk about the education realm, of course, we have the categoricals and we have many of other things. And so what I find, and the reason this probably won't go anywhere, is we always hear about inflation anyway. Every time we talk about a budget in our finance committee, people are going to bring that up anyway and talk about it, as well as all the other terms that are out there. And the biggest reason why I think we'll have issues with this is legislators don't like to tie their own hands. They like to move things around and take care of things as they come up with. We see that with transportation scarcity funding. We see all sorts of things that happen in the education. So I don't know that we can easily get to just a inflation index for just the basic state aid when we have all these other categoricals. So I think there's lots more discussion to be had on this. This is an interesting conversation, but as you've noted in bold and caps, it's for information only. It's not going anywhere.
Okay, very good. Representative Schultz, thank you.
Thank you.